Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 59 of Sights on Sinnoh. My name is Will, and this week I'm joined by Turtle Guy. How's it going? Also known as JM.
Yes, I will. Going well.
Cool. Are you excited to be on this packed episode for episodes 48 and 49 of Battle Dimension?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. A lot of threads coming together once again. A couple of little side stories along the way, which is kind of cool to see.
Yeah, same. I feel like these really put together the tapestry of this season. And
Yeah,
it's so cool for that as someone who loves continuity, plot, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, I like I'm gonna jump in here in a sec, but the first episode here is called Aiding the Enemy. And the blurb reads, Ash and his friends run into a Pokemon Center to watch a big battle on the TV. It's none other than Champion Cynthia battling against Elite Four Aaron. And Paul is at the Pokemon Center too, watching the battle. Now, just off the bat here, what do you think about seeing a bit of this battle between Aaron and Cynthia?
yeah, I really like it. Again, the last episode. I mean, it's hasn't been too long since I was last on. But our last little arc with the galactic stuff, we get a hint at this battle, and then
Mm-hmm.
later on we meet Aaron, and we get to see that side of this eventual matchup. So it's neat to see that culminate. Um, and it gets kind of interrupted by the opening, but we do get to see sort of the start and end of that battle. And
Right.
we can imply that Cynthia kind of just wrecked shop in between.
Yeah, and I did like Aaron's attempt at a strategy there, since he uses his reunited Beautifly. He has it use Solar Beam on Gastrodon, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, that's smart." But then Gastrodon's just a little too strong and knocks it away with Stone Edge, which of course is like poison to bug and flying types.
Yeah,
Oh,
it is also cool that there's still a little mystery with both of these characters in that the Pokemon they use for this battle, or that we see in this battle, are
mhm.
the ones we've seen previously.
Exactly. Yeah, like Cynthia's very conservative with what she shows, and maybe that's just because she
Mhm.
doesn't want her opponents to know.
Right.
So, yeah, it's still kind of nice that there is a bit of, like, shroudedness, I guess, behind it, or like a hidden element that we'll hopefully learn more about.
Mhm.
But this is where our heroes kind of run into Paul, and as the battle ends, they're all kind of talking about, like, oh yeah, Cynthia's still really strong. Like, who would have guessed?
Big
And
surprise.
right, it's like, well, she's the champion. We sort of like wreck everyone up to this point. And Paul comes over and asks, how did everything end up? What did you think about that question?
It's. I feel like a lot of this conversation is just lost in translation.
Yes.
It feels disjointed. It feels awkward on all fronts. Like
Mm-hmm.
Paul, Ash, Brock a little later on. Like it just feels weird.
I think that's my main take on this episode. I feel like the script could have been better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that because there's a lot of broad strokes here that seem like they're going in one direction, but then the follow-up of the conversation doesn't really match. Like there's something that's just off there. And I'm wondering if that is definitely just a translation thing from the sub to the dub version. And I haven't actually had a chance to look it up, but I'm really interested in seeing what the subtitled version of this scene is. And the rest of the
Yeah.
scenes here, really.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. It just feels off.
Yeah, because like for a second it seems like Paul's concerned about Chimchar.
Right. And then it's like, oh, I meant about Blaze.
Right, and then from there, Ash gets defensive about Blaze.
Yeah, he's like, I get Blaze, but I don't want to rely on it.
Hmm.
And then Paul just leaves
Yeah, he's
in
just like, all
very
right.
Paul fashion.
Yeah, and I'm like, I wonder if Paul ever does try to change, if people are automatically going to just assume the worst out of him.
Right.
Just because it seems like there's these biases here from our heroes a bit. But this does inspire Ash himself to go train. So he goes and does that outside with his team of Weasel, Chimchar, and Pikachu against literally everyone else in the party except like Brock's Pokemon, I guess.
Right.
And this training method immediately reminded me of what we saw before with how, well, at least it was similar to how Paul has trained his Pokemon in the past.
Yeah, and they directly mention that a little later.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. We can get to that when it happens, though.
Right. It's basically everyone attacking at once and Ash's Pokemon kind of waiting their chance to hit back and break through all this barrage of attacks, basically. And during this, we see that Paul is watching because his Torterra is getting trimmed by Team Rocket, which I thought was kind of nice.
Yeah, and he's just like behind a bush reading at a picnic table. I don't.
Yeah.
What is he doing?
He's like studying, probably.
I guess.
Drinking like his orange juice and waiting. Well, he's probably just waiting. It's like you're at the DMV or something.
Yeah, the
Because,
car wash.
yeah, exactly. Because Team Rocket again is like treating Torterra as if it were a bonsai tree and trimming its leaves and everything. And he kind of gets mad at them for talking. He's like, get back to work, basically. I'm paying you for this. And he goes over and sees what Ash is doing, of course. And as Brock kind of comes over to Ash and is like, hey, that's good, but you need to get better at what you're doing, basically. And
Yeah,
like,
and like not like you also got to hold some moves back.
mm-hmm. Right. He's like, don't go. He's trying to get Ash to be more strategic about all this.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like that. And Brock, in general, I think is a cool under the radar character in this episode. But we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So after this, Brock kind of looks over and sees Paul staring from the bushes. So he goes over to him, and again in Paul-like fashion, he's like, "What do you want?" And Brock is very diplomatic in this conversation with Paul.
Yeah, this was also where the dialogue felt weird to me, and I think it might just be Brock's voice actor and his cadence. It just, I don't know. It's just like this guy's just straight up reading the script.
Mm-hmm. Like, I get what he's saying and trying to do, but it just doesn't land. It's really weird. Like,
Yeah, he's like, your training style is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? It's just like that on repeat. And then
Right.
Paul is just like, I can't believe Ash isn't using Blaze. He's like, why are you so obsessed with Blaze, first of all? Like, Ash has like 3 Pokemon in battle right now, and you're only focusing on the one with Blaze because you owned it.
Right.
Which doesn't line up because like it's
Mm-hmm.
clear that he's taken note of like Pikachu and Volt Tackle.
Yes. But I guess Volt Tackle is one move while Blaze affects most of what Chimchar does.
That's true. But like what I'm saying is that Paul has been observant of Ash's whole team.
Yeah.
And now he seems hyper focused on this Blaze thing. Despite the fact that he's like met up with Ash and Chimchar like multiple times before. Like since Ash took in Chimchar.
But we did get that flashback of how Chimchar was affected by Blaze in the last battle against Paul. So that's like the last time he saw Chimchar, so it makes sense that it's on top of his mind. But I guess Paul should probably be a bit more observant of what else Ash has been up to in terms of his team. Like, he doesn't mention Gliscor at all.
No, which again, like Ash and Paul's teams are like very, very much reflections of each other.
Yeah. And we do see
And
some of Paul's current Pokemon, like his Gliscor,
yeah,
Torterra, and Magmar just chilling.
but you get those like analogs to each other, like Torterra and Grottle, or spoiler, sorry, Torterra and Turtwig.
Right.
Torterra and Turtwig, and then of course
Glis-
the Chimchar going across the lines, Gliscor and Gliscor,
right.
and then the Electabuzz Pikachu relationship that we've seen already.
Yeah. The only one we haven't really seen is Magmar.
Right, because Magmar is relatively new.
Right. He's the replacement for Chimchar.
Right.
And Brock also does mention at one point, he's like, hey, why are you curious about Ash? And like, why did you come up to us and ask about Blaze? And that was the thing I was going to point out is I feel like that's the first time we've seen Paul be the initiator in an interaction between them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And yeah, because I think every other time it's been like Ash or someone else notices and he just ignores them. But like, this is an interesting change in their relationship where he actually comes up to them, which again, I feel like isn't as strong, mostly because of the translation here, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then after Brock and Paul have their chit chat, well, actually, there is something else here because Brock
Yeah.
brings up Reggie, his brother.
Yeah, and we get that sort of backstory that was hinted at back when we were
Mm-hmm.
in Veilstone, and you and I were talking about the frontier badge, frontier symbols, and all the badges and everything. Brock mentions that he's like super surprised that Reggie did all that,
Mm-hmm.
and then he mentions the was it the brave symbol?
Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah, the one that's missing. Which again, it's like a blink and you miss that thing
Yeah.
in the episode that is shown. And we get some exposition on that.
Right, because Paul explains like, yeah, he was like burning through all these gyms, he was getting all these symbols through the battle frontier, but then he lost one battle and just gives it all up like that. He should have been bitter, but no, instead he was always smiling, always happy. And I'll never understand it. And this is
And
where
then he calls him pathetic.
well, he's just
Which,
very adamantly trying not to be like his brother.
right, right. So this is weird for several reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The first is just the psychopathic thought that being able to move on from loss and defeat and like still be happy with your life is like a sign of weakness and makes you pathetic. Uh, Absolutely insane.
It was
Um,
like he was so close to winning the battle frontier and they just gave up.
right, but then like, but that's not why he resents Reggie. He resents Reggie for not being bitter. He resents
Mm.
Reggie for moving on with his life
Okay.
and pursuing like being a Pokemon breeder and all that, and like finding happiness in his life. Because that's the part that Paul says he doesn't understand.
Yeah, I kind of see it as like half and half, but because it's already been so long, it makes sense now that that's what he's grown to resent
Right.
about his brother.
But the other thing that's weird about this to me is that he resents his brother so much and is like, I don't want to be like him. Like I'm trying to be what he's not. But he still relies on his brother to like train his Electabuzz.
Yeah, or at least like be his
And
PC.
yeah, but he's like, but Reggie said like I'm like Paul asked me to train his Pokemon, and he still confides in Reggie because he told Reggie about Pikachu with Volt Tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just a disconnect here, and there's always a disconnect with Paul's characterization. But here it's like he comes across as if he doesn't have the relationship with Reggie that Reggie has already established.
Hey, it's not like they're estranged. We've seen them
Right.
talk, and
Right.
sure, he's still cold to his brother, but it's not necessarily.
But they talk on the phone and they share Pokemon and like
Hmm.
and Paul has clearly talked to him about Ash, his biggest
Right.
rival. Like
Hmm.
he confides in Reggie, and yet in this scene he talks about Reggie as if like he's completely unimportant and someone he doesn't want to associate with.
Yeah.
And it's just that like contradiction, like consistent contradiction that Paul is, where like
Yeah.
what he says doesn't line up with what he does.
I'm curious if the line here was more about like, I won't go down his path,
Path, yeah.
because that again, it's frustrating because there's so many things like this that just seem like, is this what you meant? Like were the autocorrect for the writer Google search in the translation here? Because
Right.
with small tweaks like that, we avoid so much of this weird contradiction.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's annoying to see because it's just really weird. Given so much of what they've established so far.
Right, right.
But from here, we kind of move on to Ash and Paul's confrontation, where Paul says, "Hey, you're doing what I did, and you called me out for that training method."
Yeah.
And Don steps in and says he's training for the Heart Home gym, and like, what? Like, that doesn't have to do with this. What are you
Yeah,
saying?
that explanation doesn't sit well with me,
Uh
but
huh.
on the other hand, there is a distinction. Sure, Ash is like telling his Pokemon to like give it all they got when they like unleash those attacks on them.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a couple of distinctions here. One, Ash is also taking the hits.
Ooh, that is a good one. I didn't think about that.
And and so that allows him to control it. That
Mm-hmm.
allows him to understand what his Pokemon are going through and realize when they're reaching their limit.
Okay, before we go on to the next two reasons, that explanation would have been way better than what Ash says in the moment
Yeah,
about.
yeah, oh, 100%. But of course they're not going to say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um but the other thing I wanted to say is that they flash back here to show like that training bit from the tag battle
Right.
arc and the attacks being used. And while Ash's Pokemon are giving it all they got, there's a big difference between, Gliscor and Staravia's moves and Torterra's Hyper Beam.
Right.
You know, there is still this power creep that Paul's team has that isn't being acknowledged here, in that right now Ash's limit is nowhere near even half of what Paul's capable of, because Paul's using a team that he's taken through 4 generations and or 4 regions, and Ash, the only one that's that consistent is Pikachu, but he also splits it all up over like the experience that his team gets, and also Pikachu's not the one attacking, he's the one defending in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So
Was there another
there,
reason, or those it?
that's it. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the big thing. But it just feels like Paul's version of it is at another level.
Right. Like he's going at it with a non-stop assault of moves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here it's just like a steady pace of
Yeah.
all these attacks and giving Ash's team a chance to go at it rather than like following up and knocking down his Pokemon and then hitting them when they're down.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is Paul was doing it to trigger Blaze, which specifically requires taking damage.
Yeah.
Whereas Ash's training here is for the purpose of defending.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the purpose of countering.
Mm-hmm.
And using the offensive moves as defensive tools.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference because when Paul is attacking Chimchar to trigger Blaze, Chimchar is not able to defend itself. It's literally just
Mm-hmm.
meant to take the hits until it triggers this ability.
Right. Like it's supposed to just take the hits, while here Ash is training them to resist actively.
Yeah. Yeah, and make efforts to mitigate the damage.
Right. Because they counter with like flamethrower, wire gun, thunderbolt just to knock back all these attacks. And eventually that's what happens right before Paul walks over, is that they're successfully able to do that.
Mhm.
And Chimchar was never like, never there because Paul didn't want him to be, basically. He wanted to get Blaze, like you said.
Right. Right.
And this is where also Paul reveals that he did challenge Fantina and got the badge, which Ash is like, ah, like, like it shows again that he's
Of
falling
course,
behind.
yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I did challenge Fantina, but the sleep moves really, um, like incapacitated me basically. And he's saying that. Oh, Paul actually kind of gives his own strategy here and says like, hey, you have to just keep hammering away at her ghost types, and eventually they'll just fall over.
Like sure, but how did you
Yeah.
counter hypnosis? Like
uh-huh.
it's like that works on every other gym leader because it's just straightforward attacks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that works on Crash Awake, that works on Maylene. But the whole thing about Fantina is that she has a completely different strategy that Ash isn't used to.
Right.
She relies on quick movement and status conditions.
Yeah. And Ash says like, hey, faith in my Pokemon, and they've got faith in me, so this time it's going to be different, which again doesn't make sense because that wasn't the issue last time. And
Yeah, the issue was that he was just caught off guard by the strategy.
right. And what you said before about like how he works with this. Oh, what was that thing you said before? I was like, this is the better explanation.
Oh, that he's like involved in the training and like taking the hits himself as well.
Right, like he's experiencing what they are. So
Yeah.
he's going to have a better understanding of how to act. And
Right.
that's what he should have said. Like, just straight
Yeah,
up.
I don't know why they didn't. I don't know why they didn't do that. Or
Mm-hmm.
why they didn't say that because you know that's the whole point of him being there because he gets knocked down and like he like
Mm-hmm.
makes comments about like oh you called those attacks like you know like it's clear that he's one more lighthearted about it and two like understands what everyone's limits are.
Right, exactly. He's very much the leader that everyone says leaders should be. Like,
Mhm.
if you're not willing to be in the front lines, then don't take charge.
Right, right.
Paul is just indifferent to this, so Ash challenges him to a battle, and Paul's like, "Hey, like you could have just said like you want to use Blaze, and I'm in." It's like, no, I didn't. I just want to
Yeah.
battle.
He's like what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah,
Like
because that's
Paul
what
has gotten just so obsessive over Blaze and it's like really weird.
I think. Paul just wants to like learn about it, and when he sees it more, that's where he's going to like come up with a strategy for countering it or using something to that power level on his own team. But
Yeah.
that's just my take on it. It's definitely not very obvious here. Ash is like, all right, we'll do it, and Paul says it'll be a one-on-one battle, and uh, Ash is ready to go, and Turtwig actually comes up and is like, I'll do it. Pick me. Put me in, coach.
Yeah, and then we get the little translation from Meowth
Yeah.
saying like there's no point in like the other ones getting worn out. Like I'm not gonna be battling in the gym, so put me in coach.
Right. Which kind of contradicts something that happens in the next episode, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just came to mind for me.
Yeah.
So he sends out Turtwig, and Paul sends out Honchkrow, which we've seen, but Ash hasn't seen.
Right, right.
This was in the flashback that Maylene had when they first meet her.
Yeah, we see that for the gym battle against Maylene.
Right, where he evolved as Murkrow, clearly. And now he's got this powerful looking Honchkrow. And Ash does recognize before he even scans it with the Pokédex that it's a flying type, so
It's
good
a
for
bird.
him.
I hope he recognizes that.
Right. You'd
It's
hope.
the big boss Pokemon.
Yeah, I love that title.
Yeah, and then it talks about like how it like spends most of its time like preening its feathers.
Yeah.
And Dawn's just like, that's some Pokemon. Dawn is not having it this episode. She has very few lines and they're all snarky against Paul.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And I love it. I'm here for it. Thank you, Dawn.
And Brock gives more insight saying, hey, that's not good for Ash because he has a grass type. And Ash is like, no, we're good. Don't worry. Turtwig has speed. There's no way he's going to lose his speed. Oh, boy.
Yeah. So here's an inconsistency. They've really emphasized this whole series that Turtwig is fast.
Mm-hmm.
Turtwig is not fast.
Oh, yeah. In the games, no.
I'm just going to put that out there. Turtwig's base speed is 31.
Right.
It's terrible.
Yeah, but that's what makes Ash's Turtwig special, is that it has a miraculous speed stat, apparently.
Right, but like its next lowest stat is like special attack at 45.
And speaking of special attack, he uses Energy Ball.
Energy Ball, yay. Ash, do you not know how to build your team?
Hey, it's like, what else is Turtwig gonna learn that's like a strong physical grass move? And also, Gen 4, they're like, all right, you gotta give it something. And he sends an Energy Ball, which Brock's very proud of. And sends it towards Honchkrow, who's charging up Sky Attack, but Paul's like, that didn't do anything, just go for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the type disadvantage here.
Right, and Ash does have a trick up his sleeve, however, and has Turtwig spin over the Honchkrow.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, showing us that tactic. However, Honchkrow kind of follows up with some Night Slashes, and misses the first time, but then comes back in for the attack. And Brock gets very vocal.
Yeah.
He says, weird. You're going too easy, stop dodging.
Yeah, it's like that one that's like Turtwig's whole thing for 2 seasons now is like how nimble it is.
Mm-hmm.
And like agile and able to dodge and then use those openings.
Right. That's his whole style. And
it works.
It's enforced this episode specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I'm trying to understand this. I feel like Brock, while being very diplomatic, wants Ash to beat Paul.
Yeah. On
a like moral level.
I think, I think it's a morality thing, and it's partly the gym leader in Brock. Is that one side is the gym leader, the side that like wants all his opponents to like learn and be better and become better trainers, and then the other side is Ash's longtime best friend and traveling partner of 4 regions now, who wants his best friend to succeed and has seen firsthand how crappy Paul can be.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's a part of it.
I think part of that second half is also him being a breeder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just understanding how Pokemon and trainers work together. So I kind of like it, because normally Brock tries to be very neutral.
Mm-hmm. But he's like the commentator, especially in like gym battles. Even if he is cheering for Ash, he's the one offering commentary on like, this leaves them at a disadvantage. Like, that was a smart move. He's less emotionally charged.
Right. Like, here he even stands up, and I'm like, whoa, like this is
like, leave that to Dawn.
Yeah. Like, this is new territory for Brock, and I kind of like it. I just wish it was a bit more developed, because this is kind of all we see for this episode, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
We do see a more emotional Brock next episode, which is fun.
Yes, that is true. Honchkrow goes in for an aerial ace, and Turtwig tries to counter with bite, but gets knocked back. And from here, he just kind of gets beat up. Like, not the move beat up, because I'm pretty sure Honchkrow can learn that, but he kind of just beat up by this Honchkrow, and just shows bruises on it. And as he's like kind of ready to fall over, it starts to evolve. And as a Turtwig fan, what do you think about this point in Turtwig's evolutionary stage?
I agree with Dawn in that, yay, Turtwig finally evolved. But also, Dawn, shut the hell up. You're over here with your Piplup that's not going to evolve for 10 years.
Right? Like, you've had one Pokemon evolve, Dawn. It wasn't even like yours for 2 regions.
She's like, yay, Turtwig finally evolved. I'm like, Dawn, you're literally never going to evolve that Piplup.
Right.
Like, sorry, people who are getting spoilers for everything that comes later, but she doesn't do it.
Piplup swallows an Everstone.
Yeah. Hey, wait a second. Wait a second, that's someone else.
And then, oh well, that's another season.
Yeah, that's another series and another bird Pokemon.
But yeah, we do get Grotle, and Ash is pretty hyped about it. He looks it up on the Pokedex, and
yay, Suicune. Sorry, I had to.
That's like a deep cut inside joke for another channel. But yeah, we get the Grotle, the true Suicune of this series. Forget about the Drifloon episode 1. But yeah, it lives near forests and waters and leaves, and allows light to shine on the tree on its shell. And it's got a big tail.
Yeah. Solid middle evolution, honestly. I like all of the starters and like all the stages from this region. I don't know. This one and Gen 7 I think are my favorites in terms of starter lines. It's just I don't know. I feel like for both of them it's really hard to go wrong with anything that you pick.
Totally, yeah. I feel like Gen 3 and 1 have underrated middle evolutions.
Yeah. Those are good.
But yeah, I know overall, just for Sinnoh, I think they're all pretty good. And I always kind of wish I had all of them on the team, but then there's like a ton of other cool Sinnoh Pokemon I want. Right. So I just kind of gotta go with one of them, unfortunately. But Ash is again thrilled, and it's like, all right, we'll go ahead and mix it up now with Grotle. So Honchkrow comes in with an aerial ace, and Ash is like, all right, dodge and use Energy Ball.
Well, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, that's like a big no from Grotle, as it like tries to shift over and barely even moves an inch when it gets hit by this aerial ace. And Dawn's like, oh wow, Honchkrow is really fast, and Brock kind of says, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much the rest of the battle, as we see Honchkrow going in with different attacks, and Ash trying to get Grotle to move as usual, but it's lost pretty much all of its agility.
Yeah, it's not even a speed thing at this point. It's just not able to move, like, right, regardless of how fast it does it. Like I don't know. It's weird that this episode like chalks it up to speed when it's more than that. It's that Grotle isn't used to this body and the added weight, as Brock says later.
Right. Well, he kind of says speed here, but then with more analysis from Brock, it becomes a bit more transparent that that's not the case. But before we get there, Paul does kind of say like, you're like, he calls Ash pathetic, but then explains why.
Well, not only that, Paul just goes off. He just like it's a solid like 10 seconds of like calling Ash like a no good, pathetic loser or whatever. It's like, dang, dude, chill.
He says, if you think you can win with faith alone, you're like no better than a lowlife loser trainer. Yeah, he kind of disparages down here. I'm like, Paul, what you're trying to say at the end of the day could be helpful, but you're just filling with all this unnecessary stuff in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
He says, if you have no idea how Grovel's changed, you're not going to win. So
Yeah.
he's not wrong, but the way he says it is just a
That
lot.
delivery is just terrible.
Yeah. And watching all of this is Torterra.
Yay.
Were you kind of catching on to what was going to happen here as we cut to...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do a lot of cuts to Torterra.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of clear that it's watching and observing and sees this, kindred spirit in Turtwig / Grottle.
Kindred shell, you might say.
Yes, yeah. Sure.
And Grottle starts to tank a Dark Pulse from Honchkrow, but then eventually gets blown back, and we kind of cut to later where it's being treated by Nurse Joy, and this is where Dawn says another line, which I'm like, jeez, like, okay, Dawn, you and Paul need some like work on communication skills.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I thought Pokemon were supposed to get stronger when they evolve.
So this was where some of the math that I looked up came in.
Mm-hmm.
So I said Turtwig's base speed 31. Grottle's base speed is higher, not by much. It's up by 5, and it's 36.
Right.
And then Torterra's is 56, which is still not great, but a good jump up at least.
Right, exactly. But the thing that Brock points out is that it's 10 times heavier now. And that is actually pretty accurate, because it was about 22 pounds as a Turtwig and now 213 pounds as a Grottle. So, like 10 points more speed is still like 10 times less than the amount of weight that it gained from this evolution.
Right.
And this did bring to mind what Pokemon has Ash had with a similar situation in terms of evolving and getting a very drastically different body type in terms of mass. Yeah. The closest I could think of was Bayleaf and Chikorita. But Chikorita's thing was never really speed, so it wasn't a huge shift.
Maybe later Tepig?
I don't...
Tepig to Pignite is kind of similar in that way.
True, but its whole thing was getting Flame Charge and also being like an agile fighting type on 2 legs.
Yeah.
So I think being a quadruped is also a big factor here.
Right. I'm trying to think of what else.
This made me really kind of look at Ash's history and see that historically he doesn't have a lot of slow big Pokemon that are like
the tanky type. Yeah. I'm not super familiar with his Unova team.
Yeah, like if anything, he'll get something similar later, but at least in this...
Maybe Snorunt Glalie?
I don't know, because again, Snorunt wasn't like a very fast Pokemon, and Glalie floats, so if anything, it's like faster.
Fair. I just mean like the body type change.
Oh, sure, that's true. We didn't get a lot of development for Glalie. Once it evolved, it was like at the Pokemon League that evolved. But yeah, that is a pretty drastic change, I'd say. But I kind of gotta give it to Ash here. He hasn't really experienced this kind of shift in one of his Pokemon before.
Yeah, he hasn't.
So with that, Brock kind of like explains it to Ash. Though I feel like Ash could have figured it out a bit with his experience going forward. And it's like kind of a sad time, but as we're dealing with this, we cut outside to Paul training with Weavile and Torterra.
Ooh, this was another fun little thing that I just looked up for the heck of it.
Oh, okay.
Is what EVs Weavile gives.
Oh, speed?
And attack. 1 speed and 1 attack.
Okay.
So that's a fun little thing here because that's clearly what he's training.
Oh, you're thinking,
For
okay.
is he's doing a bit of speed training here.
I didn't see, I mean, from what he does, which is attack Weavile with Frenzy Plant, I kind of just saw it more as him training Torterra's endurance against something that it's weak against and powering through to still hit it.
Right.
Because
I just saw like a lot of like response time sort of
oh,
stuff
okay.
here.
I can see
And I
that.
think that's how they're interpreting speed throughout this episode is like response time and like ability to like recover from attacks and such.
I think they might also actually mean agility at some
I
points.
yeah, I think that's it. It's just weird that like they straight up like a little later when Gruddle's like running into a rock repeatedly, they straight up call it like speed.
Yeah, and it's more about
And
mobility and
yeah,
like
it's mobility and agility that is the more important thing here.
right. And Torterra, as it's doing this and is able to successfully knock down Weavile, kind of looks back at the Pokemon Center distractedly. Yeah, even it says in the closed captions. And Paul's like, "What's the matter with you?" And Torterra, I love this. Torterra just stares him in the eye and grunts. And Paul looks down and he's like, "Why don't you just let it be?" But with a very different tone of voice.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
He gets what Torterra's doing.
yes. And
He
also,
doesn't get why.
I think he gets why.
He gets why. He doesn't get why it's so persistent.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably more accurate. And
He's like I get why you have these feelings, but then why do you insist of like focus,
right.
big turtle, focus.
And I interpret this a lot as Portera being able to get away with this more because it's Paul's first Pokemon.
Yeah, it kind of has that status.
Yeah, he's like, you don't give me that. Like I've been with you from the beginning. I know, I know like your limits and everything,
Right.
which I really enjoyed. And then meanwhile, Ash is with all his Pokemon in like the bedroom and kind of trying to console Groddle, but not very effectively, I'd say.
Yeah, Carl's just sad.
Yeah, he's like, oh, like he's just very downtrodden upon what happened. And to be fair, it's like a big identity shift for him in terms of like battle style. And Ash is still kind of like, hey, don't worry, like we'll get back from this. We'll work
We'll
on.
build you a new style and
Yeah, he kind of says like we might like work on speed. Tell Growler what it wants to hear, I think.
yeah.
But Growler's still very down on itself. And then in the middle of the night, as all his Pokemon are kind of like on top of Growler, I'm guessing Ash like let them all chill with Growler to kind of keep it company. Growler gets up and starts walking out, and everyone's like, "Hey, where are you going?" Which is really cute. And I'm guessing Growler says like, "I'll be right back. Don't worry." And then Pikachu like directs everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish we knew what they were all saying, but it's like some of them stay, some of them go. Piplup just wants to sleep.
Right. Vin was like, I'm good.
And Pikachu's like, don't give me that.
Right. It's great. It's like the Eternal City heist.
Yeah.
I feel like Pikachu's saying, okay, we'll go see what's up with Groudle, and you guys stay here in case something happens. And like, if I get the feeling he says, if we're not back in 5 minutes, wake him up because of what happens. And I feel like Pikachu says this because he's like, I've dealt with Team Rocket enough. I know that something might happen there. So you guys are the B squad. And then Growlo's outside kind of kicking up some dirt and trying to again get mobile, but trips and like slams into a rock, which looks brutal.
Oh yeah, it just keeps running into this rock.
There's like a whole montage of it falling over, and it just does not look good.
Falling on its back, falling on its front, falling on its everything.
Right, just like all over the place. And as someone who is a turtle owner, can you confirm if this is natural behavior for turtles?
Running into rocks? No.
Falling over repeatedly?
I mean, mine are aquatic, so they don't really like. They do kind of book it when they're like on dry land, but
okay.
yeah, they don't slam into things and try to hurt themselves here.
Try to get some speed.
Yeah.
And then Growl's like on the floor, kind of defeated and crying, and
oh my god, this is so sad.
Yeah, we might tweet this, but it's
crying turtle.
Everyone else comes over to comfort it, and Team Rocket spying on them, and then everyone is immediately turns around as they see coming from the darkness this huge Torterra just like trotting over to them.
Yeah, and it's got this presence. It's like thumping around, and it's like, oh. And I noticed this with Grottle too, is when it was moving, it had a bit of like when it was just walking around the Pokemon Center, it had like you could tell there was like a weight shift there.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of felt that, like the gravity of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And then back at the Pokemon Center, Staravia is pecking Ash. Piplup is pecking Dawn. I'm like, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah. Krogun's just Krogunking.
Yeah, he's like, I got this.
Easy.
And then everyone wakes up and they're like, hey, where is everyone? We'll go figure out what's happening. So they run outside in the middle of the night in like their pajamas, I guess. And before that, we see Grottle and Torterra kind of staring each other down, and Piplup also is like, "Oh no, I know what you're like. I know whose trainer you are, or like whose Pokemon you are. This is Pikachu does not immediately like start talk. Yeah, and then Chimchar actually steps in, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like
that tracks. Yeah.
Chimchar knows this guy, and he's like, hey, like hands up, hey, no, we're good. And he tells Pikachu also like, hey, let's chill. And do you want to kind of explain what Torterra does here, which I find fascinating?
Where it like motions for Gliscor, right?
Yes. At first, he directs like Gliscor to do something. And Gliscor's like, me? Okay. Like very
sure. I guess.
Right. And then we see out from the trees our heroes finding what's going on here in this clearing with Piplup and Staravia.
And just drop down from the sky.
Yeah. They're like, oh, what's going on here? Gliscor comes in with a Steel Wing and just hits Torterra in the head. And then follows up with like X-Scissor. And everyone's like, oh geez, he's just taking these hits. So this continues.
Well, and then Ash says, I think it's Ash. Someone says like, oh, Torterra can't dodge it.
Yeah, that's John.
Oh, Dawn says that, yeah. And then Brock's like, oh no, it can dodge it. It's just choosing not to. Which is like, yeah, like this is the new style that Grottle needs to adopt, is tanking the hits.
Yeah.
And, relying on the higher like defense and, ability to just hold on longer.
Yeah, like using that stamina basically to hold out and wait for an opportunity to strike back. Which it does here with Gliscor kind of going in for it. Another X-Scissor and just like stomping it down. I feel like Torterra should be able to learn Stomp after this. As it's on the ground, it just unleashes Frenzy Plant and directs it right at Gliscor, but at the last second stops the move.
And just sits there.
Yeah. And it's just looks over at Groddle, and it's like, did you get that? And everyone's
You
like,
taking notes, kid?
this will be on the quiz. And the realization also hits Ash at this moment, who runs over and it's like, hey, I saw that, and I think I know what you're trying to do here. He's like thanking Torterra and kind of saying, hey, you're giving Groddle some pointers on how to battle moving forward, and Torterra's like, yep, that's right. And this is where he explains the whole thing, where it's like, if it wasn't clear, he says, wait for the opponents to attack, take the hits, and then strike when you can. Then Torterra just mysteriously disappears back into the forest. And this is like a 1 minute, but I think it's such an impactful scene.
Right.
It's an older Pokemon that's an evolved form who is an opponent / rival of our main character, giving them helpful advice. And also showing some interesting maturity and differences between what Paul does in his training and what Ash does, because he doesn't hit Gliscor with the attack.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about like that difference there?
I don't know if it's really reflective on Paul.
What do you mean?
Well, you said the difference between Paul and Ash's training styles, and that Torterra spares Gliscor.
Yeah,
I don't think it's reflective on Paul, because I don't think Paul would have done that.
right. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that Torterra isn't acting like Paul in this moment. Like, it's not doing
Right,
what Paul would
but he's
do.
not acting like Ash. Like he's acting on his own. I don't think it's a fair comparison to say like he's acting like Ash or Paul. He's acting like Torterra.
Yeah,
He's not
I guess
adopting either of their training styles.
right. I think that's what I mean more, is that the fact that Torterra isn't acting how we would expect when the Paul's Pokemon to act. With like restraining itself there at the end. And this kind of gives Ash some hope again for like how to raise Groddle. And so we kind of cut to what Paul is doing with Torterra, who comes up to him and is like, aren't you a curious one? That's pretty much all we see for him until the next day, which I'm curious about. Do you think Paul in the next scene kind of denies that he has anything to do with it, do you think Torterra asked Paul if he can go like talk to Groddle?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it works better if Torterra didn't. And it's like this is all of its own accord, and like, you know, had that attitude of like, I don't care what Paul says here, I'm gonna help this Groddle. Especially because Paul already told him to like give it up.
Yeah, the fact that he's continuing with this. Yeah, and that's probably the simplest explanation, because then Paul clearly shows Torterra more respect as his first Pokemon, and probably would just say, yeah, like, all right, sure, just come back when you're done.
Yeah, have fun in the woods. See you in a few hours.
Yeah. So just an interesting little interaction there that if people want to look at.
Yeah, it's a 10-foot wide turtle. Like, how far is it going to get?
Yeah, exactly. And then the next day, as they're checking out the Pokemon Center, Groddle's now like carrying Chimchar and Piplup on its back.
Oh my god, it's so cute.
Yeah, and it's like, this is the new transportation for these Pokemon. And Ash is like, hey, like, Dawn gets agitated with Paul as always, but he's like, hey, it's fine. Like, we're learning, even if Paul doesn't really kind of want to admit that he had any role in this. We'll take what we can get, and hopefully that'll help us get stronger as a team and help Groddle build up this whole new style that's going to fit his new body type.
Right.
And that's pretty much it for this episode. So It feels like we went all over the place in some ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Aiding the enemy, which is episode 48 of Battle Dimension. Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
I can go first. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I'd say a 6.5. I liked it. I +1 always for the turtles.
Double turtle.
I liked. Yeah, I liked seeing the interactions between Gretel and Torterra.
Mm-hmm.
I liked getting those threads of the Reggie story. What really killed it for me was the dialogue. It just felt so disjointed, and it felt like they had ideas and they didn't really bring them together how they wanted. And it's mostly in terms of like character motivation and just consistency with the characters, mostly Paul, which has been my complaint about him for 2 seasons now.
I really wonder how much is not only the translation affecting this, but specifically things like mouth flaps, where they need to match syllables and how
make it look normal. Yeah,
right. That it doesn't say a sentence, but not fit the way the mouth is moving at all. Because there's a lot of moments in this dialogue where I just want to rewrite what they're saying because you can clearly tell what they're trying to do, but then the words that come out don't match, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
So I'm very curious and almost inspired to like rewrite some of this and see like if that would improve it that much.
Right.
Because I feel like it would.
I think so.
Right? It's just like you can tell the setup, but
yeah,
it's frustrating because of that, for sure.
This episode's like really good in concept. I think in execution it just fell a bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's mostly just the script.
Right. Because like the animation is all fine, the setup is all fine. Like there isn't anyone necessarily acting out character, it's just the specific lines themselves that don't add up.
Right.
So yeah, with that in mind, I think I'll give it a 6.5 too. If I like watch a dub and maybe see if there's a discrepancy there, I might change the score later, but at this moment I haven't seen it, so that'll be on the list.
One thing I did like is that it's a Paul episode that even though it starts focus on Chimchar with all the Blaze talk, it ultimately isn't.
Yes.
And it's actually Turtwig, which is a really nice shift because it seems like every Paul episode is like about Chimchar, which I mean naturally would be.
Yeah, the Turtwig thing kind of comes out of nowhere, honestly, and it's a nice surprise.
And especially just because like Turtwig hasn't gotten a lot of focus
right
this season, especially because it's like been mostly focused on Chimchar.
Yeah, Chimchar's really stealing the spotlight here. Like the last thing it did was learn Energy Ball, and that was kind of it.
I mean, it did the gym battle.
Yeah,
against Wake.
That's true. And then after that, kind of just took a back seat for a while. But at least this does give us a nice new development for what Turtwig's future looks like moving forward. Or Grotle now, actually. So this moves us into episode 49 of Battle Dimension, which is Berries busting out all over. As Ash enters the Heart Home gym for his gym battle, he collides with a blonde trainer in a hurry. The trainer races off down the street, leaving his badge case behind. Now, all I have to say at this moment is thud.
Oh my god. Okay, everyone, I am not a fan of Barry in general. He's just a lot. He really is. It's like kid, like stand still for like 2 seconds, and you'll avoid like literally all the problems you have in life. I do have a take. We'll get to it as we get more info on Barry.
Okay.
I think there's like a specific spot I want to bring it up.
Sure. I have a whole theory and a half about Barry, so that'll also come up later. But this is the name of the blonde character who runs out of the gym, bumps into Ash, and it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna fine you for like bumping into me," which is this whole shtick. And he like you're like, who is this guy? He's got Pokédex, he's counting down, and immediately is frustrated by everything and runs off to do like the next thing because he's late for everything, but like he doesn't have anything going on, so it's kind of self-imposed. But he does drop the gym badge case, and Ash picks it up since he's on the floor too and sees it. Or Pikachu kind of points out to him actually, and inside are 3 badges.
Right.
I think I know 2 of them, but I don't know the third one.
There was the Eterna one. I remember that.
The Turner one, I think
And
the
it's mentioned
Maylene
later.
one from Veilstone.
Uh,
I don't think I know the red one.
the Maylene's is the square, like the square with the red
Okay.
inside. I don't remember if that one was shown. Take a
No.
look here.
Yeah, it's just the it's the mind badge from Canalave City. It's the
Oh
orange
yeah,
one.
Iron, right?
Yes. But yeah, there's like
Yeah.
a weird red badge at the bottom that I don't know what it's from. Oh, no. Okay. There's some random gym that Barry went to basically. And got this badge from.
Basically, Western Sinnoh is what we're getting here.
Yeah, basically. And then everyone catches up to him in terms of his friends. Fantina comes out and it's like, "Yeah, I just beat that chump." Like, and Ash is like,
Also,
"Hey, I want to
that's his
battle."
case.
Yeah, you're right. And Ash is super hyped to battle Fantina, but she's like, "No, sorry, I can't today. I'm tired because I've just had a ton of battles and beaten all of them, basically." So Ash is kind of disappointed, of course, and goes for a walk through the city. And he's like, "Well, I'll have to wait till tomorrow, I guess." And Brock's like, "Yeah, dude, gym leaders Pokemon have to rest too, buddy."
Thank you, Brock, voice of reason.
Exactly. And he said like, "Hey, maybe we'll go find this guy who dropped the gym badge at the Pokemon Center." So they're about to get to like a cross or intersection, and coming from one other direction is Barry, who again barrels right into Ash. And
Yeah.
knocks him down, drops the badge case, and then they get back up, and then we get a very busy scene between Barry and everyone else here.
God, it's like it stresses me out.
It is, and I think it's supposed to.
Yeah, it like accuses Ash of like being a thief,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's just jumping from random thought to random thought so quickly.
Right. He just
doesn't even let himself finish sentences. Like
yeah, basically. But then he recognizes Ash. It's like, "Hey, you were teamed up with Paul in the tag battle contest. I watched it on the tube," which is a sentence that has not aged well.
yeah, and it's funny because there's like this saxophone theme in the background, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
this feels so like Grease, like 60s, like I don't know. This feels like really dated in a way that it probably shouldn't.
Maybe, yeah. I kind of just associate that with Barry's theme, but I can see that now, especially the way he just like
He just
talking.
feels very 60s. Yeah. I don't know.
And he's like, "Yeah, you couldn't hold a candle to Paul," and it just immediately just like speaks his mind without any filters.
This guy has a problem. He's like super obsessed with Paul.
Right. And Dawn is like, "Oh, hey, you're Barry, aren't you?" Because Fantina mentioned that this trainer was from Twin Leaf Town, and that's where Dawn's from. And he's like, you did that duet with the Exploud in the town festival, right? Which I'm
Which
like,
is a sentence.
yeah, like, give us that flashback. um,
I want to see this. Yeah,
yeah, like who was louder, Barry or the Exploud? Um,
it's
and
very in
then,
character. Like that is the Pokemon he would duet with.
oh yeah, like either that or Loudred.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, oh, I remember you, Don. You're the hopelessly geeky trainer who lost to Paul. Like,
Which like doesn't
what?
describe her at all. Like
You know
I
what?
think you're thinking of Conway.
Yes, I think he's combined them in his mind. Right?
Right. Yeah. That has to be it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that because I'm like, Barry can't remember people's names or anything. I could totally see him just like looking really quickly at them and then just forgetting the difference. So I was like, yeah, they're the same person.
And then we get this great moment, the aforementioned emotional Brock. He's like, I was in the tag battle too.
Yeah.
It's like, of course you were, Brock.
And he's like,
You were there. We know, Brock.
hey, he fought against Paul and Ash in the semifinals.
Yeah, no, he did well. It's just funny.
Right. And Brock's like, it's Brock. Like he's
Yeah.
talking.
Barry's like, I don't remember you at all. He's like, my name's Brock. And then he's like, oh, I remember you. You also lost to Paul.
Right. Oh my god. And then Ash is
I'm like exhausted with
right.
this guy.
And Barry's like, oh, Ash, okay, let's have a battle right now. And it's like a battle. And like, yeah. And he starts counting. And this is where Dawn steps in and is like, oh, this is the brand new Poketch.
Yes. And this is a fun little detail.
Yeah, I love this actually.
This is the Poketch design from Platinum.
Correct. And it has one small but very good difference to it in terms of user experience.
And that is, I've never actually played Platinum, so I don't know.
It's that it has two buttons, one to go up in the applications and one to go down.
Oh man, yeah, I do see that. I have it pulled up on one of my screens.
The original one only has one button, so you have to cycle
button.
through it, which is a hassle. But yeah, this is also like, oh hey, we're recognizing Platinum exists. And that
we're in like the Platinum era now, and I think that was first hinted with Cyrus and us seeing the Giratina coloring stuff.
Yes. Well, actually, the episode with Aaron is the first one, I think, after Platinum releases in the US.
Okay.
So yeah, we're off the heels of that. Don's all over this, and Bear's like, oh yeah, I just got this in Jubilife last week. Isn't it great? So it's kind of cool tying it together. It's like, why does one game have one Poketch and one that has another? And it's just like, oh, this is the updated version. It's like the iPhone 2 or whatever.
Right.
So, and then Bear's like, hey, stop making me lose track of time. All right, I'm going to battle you. He says, like, he keeps calling Dawn Trainer Geek, and she's like, no, my name is Dawn. DAWN.
WN.
And Bear's like, yeah, right, whatever you say, Dawn. Now quit stalling, like, come, like, battle me. And Ash says the best line here.
What did he say?
What a pain in the neck. And you're like, oh my god, Ash, I know what you want to say. I know what you want to say, buddy. Oh man. And he said
there's I think in like the original series, there's like a Team Rocket variant, mono variant that's very similar to that, and like they could have gone with a worse word, but they can't say it. No.
It's great. And so Ash sends out Chimchar, and I'm like, this feels really refreshing for Ash to be like, I'm just gonna battle you because I'm mad.
Yeah, just let it out. Let it out, Ash.
Right, lets out Chimchar. And of course it's Chimchar!
And of course Barry recognizes it because he's obsessed with Paul in a very unhealthy manner.
Yeah. He says, hey, that's Paul's Chimchar you guys traded, right? And then Ash is like, no, he abandoned it, and I took it in. And he's like...
Paul's too good of a trainer to do that.
Yeah, like, how do you
It's like, buddy, are you even watching the same guy?
Right. Like, if he really knows Paul, he would know that he releases Pokemon every other day.
Yeah.
So, I wonder if Okay, Barry reminds me of a certain type of person on the internet, and only seeing them in this one particular light.
Yeah.
He's like a super fan in this unhealthy way where he kind of doesn't recognize the flaws in the person he's idolizing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because yeah, he says like Paul's too good for that, and I know the reason that you traded with him. It's because you wanted to get stronger like Paul, and it's like, oh come on, like Ash is just like you're just saying stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Barry kind of hints at his goal, which is to become really strong. And he's like, I already got 3 badges. What about you? And again, very satisfying. Ash is like, only 3? I got 4.
Yeah.
Like, Ash, you freaking tell him. Like, oh my god.
Got him. Got him.
And Barry's like, 4? Numbers don't mean anything. I'm like, you... He just makes my blood pressure go up, but also
Yeah.
the little wins for Ash are really nice to see.
Yeah, they are. Especially after just having to deal with Paul and not having good comebacks for that.
Right.
He's just so snippy in this one, and it's great.
Yeah, he's very reflective of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I think how most people would be with just encountering Barry and also seeing how, like, delusional, maybe, he is in terms of how he sees Paul and, like, Pokemon in general.
Right.
And then, of course, Barry's like, oh, I don't have any Pokemon on me. I left them all in storage. And not only, like, his usual storage, he left them in this brand new random storage at this new place he just found on the street, which we'll get to.
Barry would fall for this scam.
Yeah, he would, but also, why did he leave all his Pokemon in storage?
Do you think this guy thinks?
Fair? Well, also, he came from Twin Leaf Town, right?
Mm.
That means I'm assuming he got his Pokemon also from Professor Rowan in Sandgem Town.
Yes.
Is he not using Professor Rowan as the place to store his Pokemon?
I don't know, because we don't really see too much of the storage system because they, like, in these seasons they started like capping off the teams.
And also, like, Dawn, who's from this region, doesn't have more than 6 Pokemon.
Right.
So it could very well be that, like, Oak's an exception in being the PC system for trainers from Kanto.
Right.
So Barry runs off, everyone goes after him, and of course we see Team Rocket has like a makeshift stand where they're storing quote-unquote Pokeballs. And then Barry runs up and is like, hey, well, I'm Pokemon back. Or I'm gonna find you, and starts counting down, and they're like, okay, whatever, yeah, we'll be right back, just chill. And as they're waiting, Fantina walks up, and she's like, oh, hey, how's it going? I see you found the guy from before that I beat. And she's like, what's this shop that you guys are in front of?
Never seen this before.
Yeah, it's like, this is a red flag.
To be fair, in Fantina's defense, she's been gone for like however long.
Yeah, like a few months or something at this point.
Yeah.
But Brock does have an inkling that something is wrong here. And then, of course, the walls of the building kind of like fall to the side because it's like a cardboard.
Right. Just falls apart.
Yeah.
Boom, Team Rocket balloon.
Exactly. And they're starting to fly off. And as they go through the motto, Barry's like, all right, I get it.
You're Jesse, you're James, that's Meow.
Yeah.
Well, at least he was listening.
Right. Like, you can't blame him for not doing that, at least. And they're, of course, indignant about this. But they're still getting away with the Pokeball. So Ash sends out Gliscor. And I think Jesse sends out Seviper?
Yes.
But Miss Magius is able to take care of Seviper with Psybeam. So Gliscor is able to get in there, tear apart the balloon so they come crashing down. And Barry frantically like goes over to the Pokeballs. And again, through like the magic of anime, he's able to tell which Pokeball is his. In this bag of like 30 or something. And sends out his...
Napoleon.
Yes. What do you think about this starter choice for Barry?
Everyone has Piplups. Everyone has Piplups.
Ash and
We
Paul
got
are the only turtles.
Yeah, we got Dawn, we got Kenny, we've got Barry. Everyone from Twin Leaf Town just has six Piplup.
Hey, maybe Piplup propaganda is just really popular in Twin Leaf.
Yeah, we've got posters everywhere. They've got Piplup is pulling the strings on that town.
Yeah. Pecking its way into everyone's subconscious so that it gets picked. Okay. I get why they give him this because no one else is really gonna have an Empoleon at this point.
Mhm.
But personality wise, I could see him having Chimchar.
Yeah,
Because he's very
like give him a Monferno.
yeah.
Like the immature, like middle stage.
Like very feisty, very quick on its feet.
Yeah, that would work really well.
The Pokemon manga does give the berry equivalent to Chimchar as well, so he in some iteration he does have that, which is nice. And Empoleon or Fantina Fantina first offends Team Rocket by telling them, "Hey, the problem is simple. You don't know how to dance."
Okay, Fantina.
And Jesse's like, "That's hitting below the belt, girl."
Empoleon uses Hydro Cannon, which is
yes.
fun.
And everyone's like, "Oh, Brock points out, I was like, it knows Hydro Cannon?"
Like what?
Yeah.
And we're getting close to the point where I have my take on this.
Oh, okay.
It's we'll get this exposition here as he talks about Gardenia and that gym.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so Ash and Dawn kind of take down some initial attacks from Team Rocket, but then Napoleon steps in and uses Hydro Cannon, like really in the nick of time, and everyone's like amazed. And do you want to give some context of why Hydro Cannon is kind of special?
Isn't it like the ultimate water move, like the equivalent of like Blast Burn and Frenzy Plant?
Yes, and it's a move that only the starters can learn through a special tutor.
Right.
I don't think it's until post game that you can get this actually.
Probably that would make sense, or it's like usually close to post game.
Yeah,
Like I know Fire Red and Leaf Green. You learn it on like the Sevi Islands, like right before the Elite Four.
Yeah, that's true. I can't remember where exactly in Sinnoh you get it, but it is close to the end of the game.
Yeah.
And as they point it out, they're like, "Oh, like that's cool." And Barry's like, "Oh yeah, I use that move to beat the Turner City gym." And Fantina's like, "Oh, so that means you got that badge. That's cool."
That means you met Gardenia. Eterna Gym, the grass gym, was defeated with Hydro Cannon.
And
let's think about that.
Do you want to talk about James first, or do you want to say
that?
that?
Yeah. Let's talk about James. James gave his Cacnea to Gardenia.
Yes, and immediately when hearing Gardenia's name is like, "Oh." And then Barry goes more into detail, being like, "Yeah, that Cacnea she had was strong. It had like a really strong drain punch that was taking down our Empoleon. So it was a tough battle." And James is like overjoyed, runs over to Barry, is like, "Oh my gosh, that Cacnea is mine! Like, is it happy? Does it look good? And
make friends?
Yeah, like is it healthy?" And
Barry's like, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah,
Barry, like, who do you think I am?
Right? Like, he probably grabbed the badge and ran immediately.
And they drag him off.
Right. Yeah, because he's like, he's just very reminiscent about this. And yeah, Meowth just was like, if you were any softer, you'd melt.
Pretty good line, honestly.
Right. It's awesome.
This is the point.
Okay.
We interrupt this, riveting Team Rocket battle to give you my hot take on this episode.
Sure.
Which is probably not very hot at all. Barry is the 12-year-old player character who just mashes A throughout the entire game and only levels their starter. Just 100% that is what Barry is.
Absolutely.
Doesn't talks to every NPC but doesn't listen to doesn't read what they're saying. Just mashes buttons until they get the items, and Goes
No.
from one town to the next, only plays their starter, even if it's a terrible type advantage like Gardenia versus Empoleon.
Yeah.
Just uses an overpower move, which means like this Empoleon is probably level like 60, even though he's on the third gym.
Hey,
It's
but
just like,
he still lost to Fantina.
okay, level 40. But then just reaches that point where they just can't advance through the game anymore because they literally don't know what they're doing. They don't know what town they're in. They don't know who they've talked to.
They lost their badges.
Right, they barely know where the gym is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's just a mess. And it's like how every like 8 to 12-year-old played Pokemon.
Yep, basically.
And that's what Barry is in anime form.
Exactly. He's just personifying this group of players. And I think it's actually done really well.
It is. It's just aggravating
Right.
because of how accurate it is.
Yeah, it's like, this is
It's like, I hate this, but you're not wrong.
Yeah. Like,
But really the nail in the coffin there was like, I used Hydro Cannon to beat the grass gym.
right. And right now, guess what move it's gonna use?
What?
Hyper Beam.
Oh, yeah, the Hyper Beam.
Like, again, just the most stereotypical overpowered move to teach your Pokemon.
Yeah, it's just so extra.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that's great. You probably learned Hyper Beam first because it's a TM, and they're like, then picked up Hydro Cannon. And
You're like, I've got 4 move slots. I might as well have them both.
Right?
And Steel Wing in there for good measure.
Yes. What's his last move? Drill Peck?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we see it?
I don't think so. We'll talk about it in a sec. But that's able to blast off Team Rocket. And,
we do see. Oh no, we don't. We don't see it.
And then Fantina is like, "Hey Ash, you look a lot stronger now, so I'm gonna get ready to battle you tomorrow. See you then." And then Ash and everyone else kind of just walks to the Pokemon Center, and we finally get some really good development on Ash's part, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Because as they're walking back, he's talking to Barry, and Barry's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna rematch Fantina 2. If Empoleon's not good enough, I'll get a stronger Pokemon, and if that's no good, I'll get a stronger Pokemon on top of that." And Ash is just like, "I wonder," and they stop walking. And he says, "Just because you've got a bunch of strong Pokemon doesn't mean you're always going to win." And he says, "I think it's important to train together with your Pokemon so you can learn how to, like, what makes them tick. You can bond with them." And Bear's like, "I don't know what you mean by bonding." Like, oh my god, Barry. And then
how
Ash,
stupid are you?
yeah, he keeps going, and it's just like, it seems to me to matter, like, no matter how weak a Pokemon is, if you work together, you'll grow stronger together.
It's very Johto Elite Four Karen.
Yeah.
Her whole like strong Pokemon, weak Pokemon, like doesn't matter.
Right. And this is probably one of the more profound things Ash has ever said.
Yeah.
And
it's, I mean, it's very in line with how he is throughout the entire series, but especially this season when he's contrasted with Paul so much.
Yes, and I love that they finally do this because, like we talked about the last episode, it was just a lot of bad wording. But this is really something that should have been said in that one because...
Yes, but counterpoint is that Paul wouldn't listen to this. Paul wouldn't listen to this, and Barry, even though Barry doesn't listen as like a person, it gets through to Barry more than it would to Paul.
That's true. But if anything, I would have just liked him to say it for the audience.
Yeah.
Because, we get Paul's not going to listen, but I think him really enunciating and, like, sharpening his point of what his philosophy is something that we need him to say explicitly to Paul, even if he doesn't absorb the message.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. He would be like, whatever, pathetic.
You're pathetic.
Exactly. Barry's like, well, I just want to win. And I want to
I
win
want to win
now.
fast.
Yeah. Again, he's the 12-year-old.
Yeah, he's literally just spamming the A button right now, like
Yeah.
getting through this dialogue.
Right? And I'm sorry to any 12-year-olds listening, but like this is kind of the stereotype. Doesn't mean you have to be in it. You could very much be the Ash, which would be awesome. And he's like, I want to get strong as quickly as possible and to be as strong as Paul.
Yeah.
What do you think
God,
about
dude,
Ash's response
stop.
here? Under his mouth, or yeah, under his breath also.
What did he say? I don't even remember.
Ash says, as Paul? And then under his, he like gets the flashback to last time he battled, and he says, that jerk. He specifically calls him a jerk.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong, and also I'm like, wow, this is like
It's getting heated, yeah.
Yeah, it's a new level for Ash.
I like that we've gotten this episode immediately after
Yes,
a Paul episode.
definitely.
It's like fresh on the mind, and like this was clearly eating away at Ash, and then he meets someone who just straight up idolizes Paul and thinks he's like the best thing since sliced bread. Like,
it's like the best follow-up episode to a Paul situation because it also just debriefs on it in a great way, because you see him trying to like maintain his composure as he's trying to explain this to Barry, who is someone who you can't explain things to in a lot of ways, but is also not just completely shut off from listening to everyone.
right.
Barry keeps calling Paul like the coolest trainer and notices that Ash is spaced out thinking about things. So Dawn's like, hey, yeah, Ash just battled him a bunch. And Barry's like, what? You battled Paul? And he starts questioning him about it. But it's like, oh, yeah. Never mind. He is like, I know you lost because Paul's just really strong. It's like you're battling a giant. And Ash is like,
Ash
what?
loses it.
Yeah, he's like, what did you say? And again, Barry just kind of brushes it off, saying, "Hey, what? Like, yeah, let's go battle." So Ash and me are like, let's shut this guy down,
Please.
and we cut to the battle. And another thing where I'm like, this is clearly that like mono run player, or that like starter only player evidence here, I think, is what the rest of Barry's party looks like. Which we'll get to in a sec. But he brings out Staravia, Staraptor, which is, yes, the final evolution of Starly, which is the bird for this region. And Ash sends out Chimchar, which again, as I mentioned earlier, kind of contradicts or like undermines Turtwig's efforts in the previous episode.
Yeah, but I think Ash is also just not gonna put a grass type against a flying type again.
True. Yeah.
The whole thing last episode was that Paul knew that Ash was going Turtwig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. He's like, I don't want to, like, Growler, we're working on you. He realistically only has Wait, what's his 6th Pokemon? He's saving Buizel, Ash, and Chimchar for the gym. And then he has Gliscor. Wait, what's his 6th? Does he have a 6th?
Wait, he's got Chimchar, Buizel, Pikachu.
Yeah, Gliscor. Oh, Staravia. It would have been Staravia.
Staravia, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Staravia's not getting a lot of love, unfortunately. But yeah, we get Chimchar versus Staraptor, and Chimchar is able to dodge, which surprises Barry. He's like, what?
Bro, you have Tackle on your Staraptor.
Yeah, yes. Which, okay, this, I forgot about this detail, but this again is like, Barry caught this Staravia.
Starly or whatever.
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I keep saying Staravia. He caught the Starly and just let it level up, but never like cared about the moves because he was just focusing on Empoleon.
And it still has Tackle as on its final evolution stage.
Exactly, which is like, geez.
And of course, it gets close combat and wing attack.
Yeah, like the most basic moves that this Staraptor should know. Close combat does look kind of cool here, I'll say.
Yeah, it does. As
Chimchar's like barely dodging the wings and legs and everything that this Staraptor's throwing at it, it finally gets thrown back. and it goes in for a wing attack, but Ash uses Dig, or Chimchar uses Dig to dodge it, and then
also shocks Barry.
right, like Barry's not used to non-NPC players.
Yeah, he's not used to the PvP aspect.
Right, because then like he even tells Staraptor at one point, or Staraptor at one point to like do something as it invades to like avoid the flamethrower from Chimchar. But this time the flamethrower does hit and knocks it out. So it's like, jeez, this Staravia is like barely 36. Yeah. Like it evolved and that was it because it got hit by one flamethrower and is out.
Yep.
And then we switch to the next Pokemon, which is Roserade. And again, very early in the game, you can catch a Badoo, which evolves into Roselia, and then miraculously Barry found the stone.
I mean, yeah, he's not going to level that thing. Come on. Probably like a level 16 Roserade or whatever.
Oh, yeah. It's a very speedy Roserade, though, as it kind of like just non-stop goes for Chimchar with Poison Jab, and then eventually is able to knock it out. So Chimchar's down, and Ash sends out his Gliscor, and again, they just kind of like go at it and keep hitting each other with X-Scissor and Poison Jab until they both knock each other out. And then we're down to the last Pokemon, which is the starter for each side.
Yeah. Just a quick note, Poison Jab is a TM move for the Roselia line.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's really the only thing we see it use.
Yeah, we don't know like anything else about this.
Can't tell anything else, but yes, in this generation, it's a TM move.
Okay.
So it's not going to learn it from leveling up. So I don't know if it's a level 16 Roserade or a level 6 Roserade, but
or hey, maybe he traded for it.
For that, yeah.
Because he's talked about like kind of doing whatever to get a stronger Pokemon, so I could see him maybe doing that.
Yeah.
Or his older brother got it for him. It's like, you need something for Crash or Wake. Let me get you something. And then we cut to the final one, which again, Empoleon versus Pikachu, and Don's like, you're sending a water type? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
So Barry's like, doesn't matter because I have power. I over-leveled my Empoleon.
Yeah, this is again that 12-year-old who just button spammed A.
Right. Because he's like, I don't care about type disadvantages. Like, I've got Hydro Cannon, which he immediately uses.
Which, becomes a point for Ash in later series. Like, he also ignores type advantages, but his excuse there is, like, he's actually experienced enough to overcome them.
Right.
Whereas this is, like, my Empoleon's level 79.
Yeah. I'm just going
to taught it Hydro Cannon and Hyper Beam.
Right. Like,
you're no match for me.
Use a Steel Wing to counter some Iron Tails from Pikachu. And as Pikachu's kind of exhausted on the floor, it hits it with a Hyper Beam, sending it flying into the air. And it's a pretty dramatic moment.
Yeah, it's like knocked unconscious as it flies up.
Right. And it's like Ash kind of wills Pikachu to wake up, basically.
As Ash does.
And with Pikachu awake, it uses Thunderbolt, which kind of knocks back Empoleon. And now that it's still recovering from Hydro Cannon and now this Thunderbolt, Ash finishes the battle with a Volt Tackle. And we got the defeat of Barry, who is like, right? But Barry still doesn't really accept it. It's like, hey, you got lucky and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God.
Everyone knows someone like that too.
Yes. Ash gives another amazing line here where he's like, oh yeah? How about you come and watch me beat the gym leader that you lost to?
Sick burn, even though Ash also lost to her, but sick burn.
Yeah, like, I didn't lose in official gym battles, but also, why he doesn't even know that.
Yeah.
And this is pretty much where the battle or the episode ends, with Ash kind of cutting away to the gym. And we'll see what that looks like next time as Ash faces Fantina with his friends and Barry in the stands. What do you think about this kind of end and transition into the next episode.
We finally get the end of this storyline coming up.
Oh, for Ventina, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited for that. You know, it's a bit of a filler episode leading into that, just to introduce this new character. But I do like the setup at the end.
Right. I think it's a little sudden, but like we've been waiting for this battle for a while, so I'm like, sure.
It's literally been like the central thread of this season because that's where we started.
Right.
Was Heart Home,
That's
and
true.
here we are, like a couple episodes from the end, and we're back in Heart Home for the third time.
Yeah. And hopefully the last time, but we'll see how that goes. Some trivia for this episode. So, I think I'm trying to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure the voice actor for Barry was actually used for one of the trainers that beat Ash in the Wallace Cup, but then Dawn defeated.
Huh.
I'm like 90% sure it's the same person.
Interesting.
Yeah. Apparently, the dub title is a reference to the song June is Busting Out All Over. Do you want to guess where that song's from?
No.
The 1945 musical Carousel. So, again...
Interesting. I'm familiar with the musical. I haven't,
Oh,
listened
okay.
to it, but...
Are you familiar with it because it's part of the My Hero theme song?
No, it's not that. No, I did like a course in musical theater in college, so...
Oh, okay. And I think I know where that saxophone music's from. Did you figure it out?
No, I didn't.
I think it says here it's from... Well, it doesn't say it's from, but I'm pretty sure that's the music they're referencing. Pikachu and Pichu. Which is the short before the Entei movie, Spell of the Unknown.
Interesting.
And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense now that I read that. This is the 49th episode of the 11th season, and it takes place in Hearthome City. Coincidentally, Dawn's Early Night, which is the 49th episode of the 10th season, also took place in Hearthome. So, Again, to your point, the Hearthome is everything here.
Yeah, it's really the central thread of this season.
Exactly. Yeah. And they also point out the badge case that Barry has like a 9th spot on it for like a 9th badge, which again just makes it kind of weird. So we don't know what that mystery badge is from. But yeah, to kind of wrap this up, I'll share first. Since you went first last time, I felt a lot during this episode. And it's supposed to. So I think it really accomplishes that well. Barry is a very interesting character that in lots of ways is designed to frustrate audiences from what I can gather. And I think it pretty much nails that. But even though I know his character is all about like not having patience, I feel like they could have slowed down a bit to develop the relationship between all three a bit more. But I did love seeing the fact that everyone in Ash's party immediately had like this adverse reaction to Barry.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I think I'm going to give it a 7. It's pretty solid. It's just like it's a lot, and like it's fine to feel not like happy about it because that's not what it's supposed to do. But that's why it's kind of hard to judge it in that sense.
Man, I'm like the opposite. I'm gonna give this like a 4 just because Barry made me so mad this entire time, and like I know that's the point. But just the fact that like they felt this episode was even necessary, like it works because it's after the Paul episode. But in terms of like narrative structure and everything, it's like I said, it's kind of just filler. The whole conflict of the episode would have ended if Barry took 2 more seconds to think about things.
That's true, but I feel like his whole ambition to battle Ash would have still been there because the conflict ended up kind of being a detour.
But even so, it's like how necessary was it to introduce Barry right before Hearthome?
Yes, I think the
It's
placement is
do
the
we need this
weirdest.
now? Yeah.
Yeah, like so close to the end of the season.
The end of this overarching thread, it's like, why are you throwing one more thing at us when
Uh-huh.
you're, especially when the show so closely follows the structure of when they're in the city, it's actually like important things, like the
Yeah.
contests and the gym battles. And then we get this. And usually it's like they're on the road when like all the filler stuff happens because you need something to pad the time.
Well, there is a rival battle in Hearthome.
Yeah.
So maybe, but again, like you're saying, it's weird because of just like the overall content and major events. Like,
It's
sure, Barry's introduced here, but maybe if they introduced him earlier.
it's also weird that it's like it works after the Paul episode, but
Mm-hmm.
to introduce a new rival like figure into Ash's world immediately after having such an important one
Mm.
is just like also odd.
I I can see that, though. I will say it kind of supports and adds more context to what that relationship is between Ash and Paul,
Yeah,
because you see
that's
this
true.
outsider that isn't involved in the intimate side of this relationship, but in some ways has a lot of investment in it that like affects affects no
Didn't think
one.
didn't think we'd have Paul stands in Sinnoh, but
Yeah.
here we are.
Exactly. So I totally see that,
Yeah.
but the the execution of it is surprisingly better than I thought it'd be.
Yeah, no, the execution, unlike the last episode, the execution here is good.
Hmm.
I just find myself one just falling for the trap of not liking Barry because that's the
Hmm.
point.
Right.
And two, just not really seeing the point of this episode being where it is. Like it works where
Hmm.
it is. It's just could it have been somewhere better?
Right, because we had like this weird chunk of 7 episodes that felt very fillery,
Mhm.
and it could have easily just replaced one of those.
Yeah. And also like this is just an overall narrative thing of how long it took to get to Celestic Town and then we're like rushing through from Celestic back to Hearthome. It started like the Galactic arc, and then from there it was like 4 episodes, and then we're back to Hearthome.
Right. Well, to be fair, they spent 4 episodes that were on their way to Celestic Town, like in a camp, not moving. But
That's
it
fair.
definitely adds length that, in the overall picture, seems kind of odd.
But then you're finally back in Celestic Town, and then you have this random Barry episode where it's like we're here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do we really need this right now?
Yeah, he could have battled Barry maybe after,
Yeah,
and I think that would have been a smoother transition than what we actually get. But that's a little further
it
along.
it will be interesting to see him watch the battle though. So like,
Yes,
I do like that setup.
that's true. Yeah,
I
yeah,
just don't like Barry, and
yeah.
he's just aggravating to watch, and
Hmm.
like I know that's the point, and I know it's like done well.
Yes.
I just don't like it.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's doing what it's supposed to.
Yeah, he's like the Joffrey from Game of Thrones, but
Oh.
this character you're just not supposed to like, and like that's the point.
Question of the week. Who is a rival from the games or character from the games that we haven't seen in the anime, but you would like to see introduced?
In any of
Yeah, it
the
can be future,
games,
past. There's actually a bunch in each direction, I'd say.
yeah. Trying to think of some. Never really got Brendan, only May
No, right. Most of the male protagonists from the games have not appeared, except in like,
because Ash is the surrogate for them. Yeah.
right. They'll appear in like cameos for the movies, but that's kind of it.
Did we get Wally?
No.
Wally might be a good one.
Max has like one episode where he's kind of the Wally stand-in, but
Oh yeah, the Ralt stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
Man, I'd love to see Hop at some point.
Oh yeah, for the current anime.
Yeah, because they kind of just like created Go, and he's like very much supposed to be Hop, or like the
Hmm.
Hop equivalent.
It's like, why?
Because we have Leon. Just give us Hop, please.
Right? He's right there.
Man, we already got How.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd probably say those two would be my first picks. It would be Wally and Hop.
Yeah, those are pretty good ones. I put Wally up there. I think we have Sharon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Universe, so
I think it would be cool to get. This is actually stealing an answer from Greg in the previous episode, but for a different question. I'd like to get Wallace's niece.
oh, Lycia or whatever her name is.
Yes, I think it's Lysithia or Lycia.
I see, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
the one with the Altaria.
exactly. The Pokemon coordinator from ORS.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, because like we don't really have Lycia, I think is how you say it.
Lycia, yeah.
Yeah, we don't really have a lot of other coordinators, and it would be cool because she's like an idol as well. So she's like she has reasons to kind of appear in places and stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe like she's the reason someone gets into contests because her job is kind of scouting trainers to participate in contests also. And she's kind of forgotten, but like I'm like, oh, she's kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be a cool one. I do like that.
I think she's Masters actually.
Yeah, she is.
Okay. She has. What's her Pokemon in Masters?
Altaria.
It is? Okay, good. Because I'm looking at her in-game Pokemon and she has 5 different Altaria. So I'm like, you gotta give her Altaria.
Yeah, no, she has Altaria. She's a 5-star.
Perfect. Okay. Well, yeah, that'd be my pick. So
it's a good one.
Yeah, it's like a remake era one, so that would also be kind of interesting to see how they integrate that. But yeah,
if we have the Sinnoh rival, like they're all covered, right?
Not Lucas.
Oh, well, no, Lucas is never covered. Ever.
You're not wrong, and it makes me sad.
Justice for Lucas.
Right? Oh man. If anyone else has suggestions for who you'd like to see in the anime that hasn't been featured yet, feel free to let us know below. I think it's always cool to see those interpretations. Barry is one heck of an interpretation, as we've covered in this episode.
Yeah, they really made him the player character.
Yeah,
a bad one.
Oh man, I do wish he got introduced earlier, like one or 2 badges maybe. But yeah, that's kind of it for this episode. Very meaty as we cover a wide spectrum of things. And yeah, it's been a great time here with JM/Turtle Guy. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always. I really enjoyed these episodes. I like the payoff because a lot of these threads were ones that you and I have discussed in previous episodes.
Yes.
Whether that's like the Reggie stuff or any of the other things really.
Definitely. And I feel like after recently watching some Journeys and some Unova episodes, that's what really stands out to me about Sinnoh. Is the fact that there's payoff for a lot more things than those seasons. And maybe I just don't know them as well, but at least for Unova, I'll say a lot of them kind of feel like self-contained solo episodes, which has its pros and cons to it. But as someone who just likes these bigger epics that kind of connect over time, that's why I think I feel such an intimate connection to like what we see here in Diamond and Pearl. But yeah, if anyone else feels like that or has any other thoughts, feel free to let us know below. And if people want to find you on Twitter, where can they do that?
Yeah, it's at TurtleGuy512.
Yeah, send over those Groddle pics.
Yeah, please send me crying Groddle. It's just I need it. I love Groddle.
Yeah, Groddle's a great one. But yeah, this has been another episode of Sights on Sinnoh. My name is Will.
And I'm JM.
And thanks for listening. Hope you're enjoying Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, or Legends Arceus, whatever's out at this moment. But either way, we'll see you in Sinnoh.
See ya.
Bye.